you ready?
Yep.
So, welcome to the second of our Tide Point talks for 2021. Alan has had exactly 51 weeks to prepare for this. So I'm sure he won't miss a beat. Alan was born and raised in Evanston, Illinois, went to local schools there, and then attended Northwestern University, where he got his dental degree. And after completing that, he went into the Navy and served at Pier 91 Medical Dental Dispensary in Seattle, Washington. Following that, he spent his career aboard this ship. Alan was there, after he got out of the service, he returned and married his childhood sweetheart. They met in 5th grade, Allison, and they raised 3 boys. 2 are living in Chicago and 1 in Atlanta. Alan was active, having served on various boards, including the Chamber of Commerce, United Way, the Evanston Boys Hockey Association, and was also their coach. I didn't know you were a skater.
Yeah.
He also served as president of the Rotary Club and the Evanston Association of Dentists. Upon his retirement, the Waitleys moved from Evanston to Hilton Head, where they resided for 23 years and have been at Tide Point for the last 6 years. You may see Alan as a drummer in the Dixieland Band. I'm sure all of you have done that. They appear here quite often, and also the last Sunday of every month at the Jazz Corner. In his spare time, he creates note cards as well as pen and ink drawings of homes and scenery around the complex, as well as acrylic paintings. He is also an active tennis player out at South Beach. And with the jazz band, he has been president and newsletter editor for the Jazz Society for the past 23 years. Last but not least, if you see him with a deck of cards in his hand, be careful. He's an expert at sleight of hand. Please welcome Alan Waitley.
Thank you. Gee, just the way I wrote it. Thank you so much for coming today, and it's nice seeing a full house of 40 people. You could have probably gotten 10 more, or maybe more, but I'm awfully glad that you're here. My topic is going to start off with the Burton Island, and then maybe get into some of the other interests that I have. The icebreaker USS Burton Island was commissioned in 1946, and at that time, because of the war, it was highly loaded with artillery and depth charges and so on. And then it just kind of diminished, and we only have a 5-inch gun mounted on the bow. See if this works. It does. Oh, well, isn't he nice? That came around pretty quick. So as you can see, I can't even read it from here. I was in a very severe automobile accident on my way to Seattle out of Evanston and totaled the car when somebody came out from the side road, and I thought he was going to stop, but he just kept going at about 2 miles an hour. I learned later that he was at a party and fell asleep at the wheel. So anyhow, one of my good friends I was going to meet in Montana in a couple of days, because I was driving from Evanston all the way over to Seattle, which is, I was going to take 5 days. You know, it's 2,000 miles or so on. By the way, it takes the icebreaker 2,000, when you go 2,000 miles, it takes 10 days. So anyhow, I caught a military flight. It was a S-2F. It was a small little plane after my accident. By the way, my mother wanted me to have seat belts, and when I was driving to and from Northwestern, so she had a seat belt installed through the floorboards. And she also put a double-size brake pedal on. Well, I'm sure that saved my life, because the bruises that I got from totaling the car lasted for 3 months. And I just got a little nick in the forehead, and I was okay. Then I was at the medical and dental dispensary, and I got to tell you a story about Ken Sipe. He was my mentor. We had dinner at his house several months later after he was out of the Navy, Allison and I. The phone rang. He said, "Dr. Sipe?" "Yes, hi, John." "Oh, what time is it now?" 7:15. "Thanks a lot." "Okay." 6:30. The time was 6:30, and I said 7:15. "What happened?" "Well, you know these cotton rolls, you know, that you put in your mouth? Well, obviously I left one in because he said, "Dr. Sipe, when did you tell me to take that gauze thing out of my mouth?" I said, "What time is it now?" He said, 6:30. I said, 7:15. "Thanks for calling." That's a dental story you don't hear very often, but it was fun. Allison and I were married in December of 1960, and I was assigned to the ship in 1961, and by that time we had becomings of a child, we shall say. And I was just a young guy at that time. 25. Do I look 25? There? Now? I don't think so. So that's what I was working with. I was the head dentist in the Icebreaker. Well, there was only one. And even though it had 300 crew, they kept on changing, you know, at every port. And it was challenging because it was independent duty. Sometimes there was no other medical or dental facility within 2,000 miles going down the center of the Pacific Ocean. So that's the ship, and it is shaped like a football. It's not like a cruiser or a destroyer that's long and narrow. It's big and fat. And as a matter of fact, the size of it is the size of the width of this room, from 60 feet across. This is the width of it. And it's 300 feet long. Now, 300 feet, you can't picture 300 feet, but it's the size of the 301 building. And also, the draft is the depth of the ship below waterline. And if you look outside in the rotunda, 25 feet goes up to the highest point in the rotunda. And it's filled with water and ballast and fuel and a lot of sleeping compartments. It has a crew of 300, which amazingly enough is just about the size of Tide Point. 300 people, the size of the 301 building. If you put those together, you'll find that it's the same size, and it's also the same size as the little parking lot island. As you come in, you'll find the speed limit sign. Well, the fastest that the Burton Island can do is about 15 miles an hour. So we never got up to 17 and a half. When you drive through, realize that its cruising speed is only 10 miles an hour. So if you keep your car at 10 miles an hour, you'll find that it's really slow. It takes 4 24-hour days steaming constantly to cover 1,000 miles. 1,000 miles is from here to Bermuda. So if you took this for a pleasure cruise, it'd take you 4 days to get there and 4 days to get back, and you couldn't see land at all. This is one of the ships, and this is what we do. We break the ice with the bow and break it open so that cargo ships can come through the passage on the way to the Antarctic or the Arctic. And that's one of the reasons that we do this, is for the passageway of cargo ships. And this is a sample of the Burton Island when later it was owned and given to the Coast Guard and turned its name into 283 Burton Island, and they painted it white. The purpose, of course, is to maintain the supply ships, and this is how one of the ships comes in and creates one side, then backs down and comes back and hits the other side, and then backs down and comes down and crushes the ice. And the ice can be as deep as 13 feet, maybe sometimes 15 feet, which is the height of the ceiling. That's thick ice. It's not glacier, it's winter ice. The Burton Island and the Staten Island are these three ships that are moving this little berg out of the channel. And the other ship was called the Edisto. Well, it's not the Edisto. It's, now that I'm living here, what's it called? Edisto. I never knew that. Enough said. So occasionally we get stuck in the ice, and we can't go forward, we can't go back, and we have water that are in the baffles down underneath, and we push it from one side to the other and try to rock the ship. And it also serves as a stabilization when the ship is steaming. So how do we get out? Well, the simplest thing is to use dynamite all the way along the outside of the ship. Well, that was a good idea. And it looks like we're breaking ice, but that's dynamite. And the ship's hull is 1.5 inches thick and double layer at the bow to prevent any breakage, and 6 inches of cork between the two plates. It's built for not speed, but power. So one of our first trips, we took 3 trips on board. The first one was to Point Barrow, Alaska. You can see it up at the top. And we left Seattle and went into Kodiak, and then through the Aleutian Islands and up to I knew it this morning. Chukchi Sea, right? It's not right. Anyhow, Chukchi. And we were up there to once again allow passage for ships. And one of our crewmen, surprisingly enough, came down with an appendicitis. Our MD on board was a internist. So he called ashore, and there they had another doctor there serving, a Navy doctor. He was an internist. I was trained in general and spinal anesthesia before we came on board for anesthetics. So we took this kid aboard and got him into Point Barrow. And I gave anesthetic to him, which was supposed to last for 1.5 hours, a spinal anesthetic. Well, 1.5 hours, they were still looking up things in Gray's Anatomy, Book of Anatomy. And they didn't get done with that for 5 hours. And he was a young, strapping kid, stronger than the rest of us. So we held him down and finished up, and I used nitrous oxide and sodium pentothal and a couple other things. One of them was an amnesiac, so that he didn't remember it. That was good. So 5 hours for an appendicitis retrieval was not particularly fun. The next year we came back to Point Barrow, and our experience there was, as you can see, the USS Skate and Sea Dragon rendezvoused under the ice at the North Pole. It's the first time that ships or boats have done that. And on the way back down south, they had a duty to experiment to try to get a torpedo to be fired underneath a ice floe and come up and strike a ship. Well, that sounds easy. Well, where's the ship? Well, it's the Burton Island. The torpedoes, of course, were not armed. So some of their officers and so on came aboard our ship, and I was lucky, maybe, to be able to spend 12 hours diving with the skate. They fired torpedoes, and none of them could really get up into the water because it was less saline. You know, if you're in a pool down here, you have to keep yourself up. But if you're in the ocean, it has more salinity, and therefore you're buoyant. Well, the torpedoes couldn't figure that out. And we could never get one to come up and strike our ship, but it did on the last one that we used, that we fired. It hit one of the understructure of the stalagmites or stalactites, and it veered 90 degrees. So the radar man down there in the skate, the captain said, "Radar, how we doing?" "Captain, it just veered 90 degrees." Well, so it's not going to make it to the Burton Island. "No, Captain, it just hit another iceberg, and it's veered another 90 degrees. It's coming right back at us." I looked at the captain and I said, "That's a problem." He said, "Yes, because we're going to go right towards it because we're broadside now to close make our target tighter. But if it hits a propeller or a rudder or us, we're done." It went by. Bells were ringing and the sirens and doors were closing, and so the rest of it was relatively simple. That was my experience on the USS Skate. Let's go to the Antarctic. It was hard to leave my wife at that time because she was going to be alone with our newborn son of 17 days, and I was gone for 7 months. So it was difficult for Allison, difficult for me, and that 7 months seemed a lot longer than the year of COVID. Normally we see the Antarctic Peninsula up here at the tip of South America, and it's a short little hop to get to the Palmer Peninsula. It's now called the Antarctic Peninsula. If you give it a little turn, you'll see down here Australia and New Zealand, and now they're up here so that we can see 2,500 miles from Christchurch to McMurdo. McMurdo is a naval air facility. C-130s coming in there routinely with passengers and cargo and so on. So that was where we were headed. It took us another 10 days. And the seas are usually not very good. Port Littleton, it was the port that we landed at finally, and that was our home Antarctic port. We were there, and we got there in early December, and again in March, early March, maybe it was even earlier. So the Adelie penguins are the clowns of the Antarctic, and they're only maybe knee-high, and they run around, and they just have a lot of fun. They're one of the 8 species found in Antarctic, and most of the other species are subtropical up into New Zealand, Australia, others. You can tell when a penguin is sleeping. Well, of course, it's sunny at 24 hours a day because they put their head under their wing or flipper, or arm, whatever you want to call it. So I want to talk a little bit about Bruce Hammond. And these slides are just, filler slides. They don't mean anything. I didn't take them. But Bruce Hammond was a dental technician, and he was with me up in the Arctic. And we became very good friends. I mean, we just laughed with each other and had a good feeling about each other. The dental technician does everything that a chauffeur does in a car. He takes the X-rays, he does cleanings and prophylaxis, and then is a right-hand man at the chair side, and does all the paperwork, and goes and he gets the next patient, down into the bowels of the ship. Well, he was playing around with his buddies one night as on our way to New Zealand, and he didn't see that there was an open hatch, and he fell into the hatch and broke his arm, his right arm, severely, and was not able to, function, of course. This would all happen at night. There was another ship that was going to New Zealand that was going to get there much earlier than we were, so we helicoptered him over. When I got to the office, quote unquote, that next day, I said, "Where's Hammond?" "Well, he's not here, doctor." "Well, where is he?" "Well, oh, I don't know. He's off the ship. What's going on?" So that was how I lost the friendship and the usage of my good friend Bruce Hammond. And we finally looked him up 25 years later and met with him and his wife up in Vancouver, and when we were taking a trip, and it's good to see him again. So I was without a right-hand man. So the next person of interest is Dr. Eldon Evans, and he was the physician that was working with appendectomy up in Arctic. Well, he got a message, and he had a activity. He was supposedly got orders for the South Pole Station because the doctor there declared himself unfit for wintering over. So Dr. Evans was chosen. He was the closest MD by thousands of miles. So Eldon said, "I'm not going." "Oh, yes, you are." No, this is my last duty. I'm going home, and when we get back, I'm out here." "No, you are wintering over." "No, I'm not." "Yes, you are. And if you're not, you'll be put in the brig, and you'll be decommissioned, and et cetera. So Dr. Evans said, "Okay, I'll go, but I want to take my first class corpsman with me. And I want to get a course in internal medicine, advanced course, and I want to have 6 months off before I return back to duty." Well, the corpsman that he wanted to take was the corpsman that I was training to take over Hammond's job. So off they went. So now I was a real doctor, because I was in charge of the medical department for another 2 months or so before another one could get down. They can't just call up a doctor and say, or anybody, and say, "Hey, come on down Tuesday." It doesn't work that way. Next person of interest was Ron Sharp. Now, Ron, he was a dental technician. He was a third class. He was spending most of his time in the laboratory making dentures and so on. He was not a chair side. Well, he showed up out of the blue and took over as my dental tech. And there was another one I trained. Then Dr. Ed Shadid. You like the pictures in the back too, aren't they? I don't know where they were, but these are all Adelie penguins in the rookery. Well, Ed Shaddad was a board-satisfied surgeon, and we had another appendectomy, and man, he could hardly wait to get his hands on them. He was in and out and did his own spinal tap in an hour and a half. So we were glad to have Ed Shaddad with us. So a last little glance at some of the penguins that we have seen and known, and we're out of the Antarctic and steaming back up north, and we will get there in April. So that's enough of the Burton Island. Let's get to the fun stuff. What? Well, it says I had many talents, and this was taken 20 years ago. And you can see that I've got a rollerblade, I've got note cards, I've got a drum, I've got a deck of cards. So this is kind of where I started, and I did a lot of things before I got there, but I coached hockey for 10 years, or maybe more than that. And I was a skater in high school, a speed skater in high school. And our son started becoming interested in ice skating and playing hockey. So I said, hey, I'd like to do that. Well, so I asked. They said, do you skate? I said, yes, I have bracers. Oh, yeah, well, we've got a spot in scorekeeping for you. So I put on a pair of hockey skates and felt my way around the sideboards, and I became eventually the skating coach for all of our three sons. They were 3 years apart, so when one gets done, the next one picks up. So anyhow, I became interested in rollerblading, and I took a lot of 10K races down here and back up there. And you can skate 10 kilometers, which is 6.2 miles. I did it in under half an hour. So that means I was skating faster than the Burton Island. And for instance, from the stoplight out here along the side of us down Pope Avenue, if you go all the way down to the ocean, that's probably about 3 miles. I do that in 15 minutes and then back again. So that was a lot of fun. I've had my falls, I've had my spills, and I did it for 20 years. Yes, I do play drums, and I picked that up in high school, actually. And I played washboard. Now, the Dixieland band that we played in was kind of it was fun. It was a good time. Many of you remember the Dixieland band called Firehouse 5+2 back when you were kids? Yes, no? Yeah. Well, our name was the Outhouse 8-3. So I found a classmate of mine who had a set of drums. He showed me, what to do. So we went down to Chicago and bought myself a set, and had gigs all over. The Alligator Dixieland Jazz Band we formed down at Cheryl's Cabaret. We all know Cheryl, but a lot of us don't know that she had a really nice little cabaret down near Coligny Circle. And we formed that in 1997, and people have come and gone, and I've got myself a new set of drums, and we will be here, by the way, save the date, on Mother's Day, right here. I'll be probably in the same spot. You've seen us here before, and it's always a good time. And I read also in the thing that just came out today that in May, starting on May 3rd, there will be no limitation on number of people. So I hope that we can pack it. And then magic, I was interested in magic, and I was in The Magician and the Chamber of Commerce. But playing drums and having a lot of camaraderie with other musicians, that really took over my life. And so almost a founding member of the Dixieland Jazz Society of the Low Country, and been their president for 20 odd years, and also their newsletter editor. I've had a lot of fun with them, and I hope we can get playing soon again in the Jazz Corner. Yeah, I've taken a few photographs in my life, and had a small business with it, and created framed 16 by 20 color prints, and one of them was in the Antarctic, and I took this with my parents' Argus A3 camera. It was just slides. Remember the Argus cameras? Yeah. So anyhow, I printed that off the slides using a Chrome system, and it was selected as print of the year in the camera club that I was in, and that was 20 years later. And just pretty scenes, and as a matter of fact, today I found this in the research of doing this program, and I kind of liked it. And this afternoon, I started putting it down on canvas with acrylics. So we'll see what happens. This was Aileen Dunan Castle in Scotland. I took this one there. Of course, you can't go wrong taking a picture like that. And that has significance because Alison's ancestry goes back to living in Aileen Dunan Castle in the 1700s. So, because she's a McRae, and the McRaes were very important. She's nodding yes. So I do pen and inks and note cards, and some of the pen and inks, that's one of the most recent ones. It was Anne Hoag's brother, I believe, that I did that for, up along the East Coast. And this was taken, I did in, I don't know, last century, I think, in Collin River. And I do watercolors. I started that early on, about the same time that I was picking up pen and inks. And I've created those as note cards. You're all familiar with this, the gazebo. And I didn't do many watercolors, but that turned out okay. And Calibogue Sunset is taken off the coastline of Spanish Wells. And just a whimsical thing, I found, I took a picture of the alligator and changed it into a note card, threw a hat on him, and that's one of the big sellers from the companies that I deal with. And acrylics, now I'm into that. I started out a year and a half ago with Mary Ann Ford right over here. And I found this picture of the bird, which is you can remind me what it is when I can get to it. Anyhow, I took a picture off the edge of my veranda and painted it, and his foot was up, and I decided to make a Christmas card out of it. And just for fun, Reflections was just fun to do. It was a challenge. And my mother was an artist, and this was a copy of her painting that we have up on our wall. So, and her father was a painter and very well-known back up in Chicago. Yeah, I've done some magic also, and I did sleight of hand at Don's Fish Market back in Chicago for a year or so. And yeah, it was, how many years ago? 30? Yeah, right. And it was because of magic. That's what I was going to do down here, take my time. So one of the local publications thought it was a good idea to take some pictures of me. So down here, I worked all the major hotels, or Westin and Hyatt and so on, and plantations and homes and Chamber of Commerce and so on. You've heard about that. So thank you very much for listening, and I hope that you had a good time. And many thanks to the people that have helped me put all this together. And I certainly have time to answer any questions. Thank you for the sitting ovation. Anybody?
How long were you aboard the skate?
I was on board for 12 hours, 6 in the morning until 6 at night. And it was very large. It's one of the first nuclear subs. And it was founded or released in 1958. Of course, all these ships are now gone. Burton Island in 1966 was given to the Coast Guard, and they left the Navy. All those icebreakers became Coast Guard, and it served for another 10 years and was dumped in 1978. Decommissioned is dumped. Anybody else? We've got all sorts of time left. Yeah.
How long were you in the South Pole then?
The whole trip was, the question is, how long was I at the South Pole? The trip was a 7-month cruise, and we were down below the Antarctic Circle for 3 months straight. Because it took, it's 9,000 miles from Hawaii to New Zealand, and we go 10 miles an hour. So in a day, we go 240 miles. So in 1,000 miles, it takes you 4 days, non-stop. There aren't any stop signs or anything. You just keep going. And sometimes it's rough, and sometimes it's not. It had a huge round hull rather than a destroyer that has a flattish hull. So as it goes through the waves, it has a roll to it, sometimes up to almost 45 degrees. So, you're tied into your bunk at night. Oh, the living quarters that I was at on board a ship when I was alone, which was not very often because I had one of the 2 helicopter pilots bunking with me. And it was a stateroom. It didn't have a door. It had a curtain, like they all did, because they don't want those swinging around. And the stateroom was about the size for both of us as the concierge desk. And it had 2 bunks, one above each other, and 1 desk and 1 chair. So if there were 2 of us, one of them was sitting on a bunk. Others? Yes?
When you finally got back home, how old and how big was your little boy, and what was he doing?
Oh, well, he was, he was 7 months old when I got home, and a good-sized kid. Allison was there for, it was colicky, so she went back to Evanston for a couple of months and had her mother help. And he came back for another 2 months before I got home in April. So it was, and now he's 6'5" and 200 and something. And he's the tallest of our 3 sons. We have a 6'5", a 6'4", and a 6'2", and a grandson that's 6'5", 6'6". Where is he? What is he? And he's a Navy pilot flying F-18 type of aircraft off of aircraft carriers. He's 27.
How quiet is it on an icebreaker when you're breaking ice?
Oh, it's interesting. One of the medical people, or chief, his name was Chief Paling, he was about ready to retire. And he spent all of his life, all of his 20 years or more, on board submarines. When we first hit ice, he just about croaked because if a submarine hits something like that, they die. So it really took them a long time to get used to it. So if it's just thin ice, you just go right through it and ching, 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 you know. You just make your way through it. If it gets thick, that you can't go through it and push it aside, then you have to back down and get a running start on your way up to 15 miles an hour if you can. And it is jolting. The ship it hits and it rides up on the ice, and then the weight of it breaks it down. And if it doesn't do that, then you back down another 100 yards maybe, reverse, get going again. So it's quite traumatic. Those are days that I, as a dentist, did not work. And anybody that saw me sitting around the boardroom, you know, with some of the other officers, they'd say, "Hey, Waitley, why aren't you working?" I said, "Come on down." It didn't take long. So, you know, it was steaming all the time, so the engines were on all the time. All the time.
Mr. Waitley, will you repeat the questions after they ask?
Oh, you know, I did that the first time, and I didn't do it the next time. Yes, she said to repeat the question. Thank you. Yes, Scott?
How thick of ice can your icebreaker go through?
How thick is the ice that we went through?
Yeah.
Probably 8 to 10 feet. And it differed between the Arctic and the Antarctic. The Arctic had a lot of the ice cap, and the ice was hummocked, which means, you know, that it was pushed together and flopped over the sides and so on. The ice in the Antarctic was winter ice, and it was flat. But it was thick enough so that C-130s could land on it. So, you know, that's a big plane. I've still, anybody else? Yes, I see. Yeah.
Your mission was sort of one that didn't require a lot of time or concentration. How would you spend your off time?
Well, could you hear that question? What did I do when I wasn't working? Well, I'd really love to go up to the bridge and just kind of hang around. And I'd read, I'd go down to the boardroom, and there was always somebody else to talk to. And we had movies every night, 16 millimeter movies. It could be, you know, anything, you know, a mystery or a comedy, or, you know, if we really liked it, we'd show it again, you know, the next day or 2 days later. There was always a poker game going on, and I kept track of what I won and what I lost, and I think I lost about $4 in 7 months. So, a big deal. It was an 8-hour day. I was working from 9 o'clock until dinner time, and the meals were good. Surprisingly enough, well, we were a group of officers, so that makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Were there any female
No,
people on board?
no, but there was, when you hit the Antarctic, a girl behind every tree. The question was, were there any girls on board? You know, nowadays there are. And the latest icebreaker, I can't remember the name of it now, but it was created in 1972. And instead of 300 crew, it had something like 15 because it was so automated. We didn't have we didn't have any computers. We didn't have any cell phones. So, you know, it was just kind of slow. It was like 1942, like 48. Anybody else? Well, I do have some, yes.
You've had so many talents and interests in your life, I imagine you never get bored. And I wondered what you do during the pandemic. Did you do a lot of artwork?
The question is, did I ever get bored with anything that I was doing during the pandemic? No, I did not get bored very much, but fortunately, the acrylic classes that I started 2.5 years ago were a godsend to me, and I think my wife feels the same way. And during the pandemic, my band couldn't play because the Jazz Corner limited the number of people that could be on the bandstand at any one time, just because of distancing. And we had, you know, they only had 4 players up there at any one time. And our band, as you saw, was 6 players, and sometimes on last Sundays we would have 10 or 12 on and off the stage. So that wasn't, I couldn't do that. I have a set of drums in my garage as a veranda, and they're quiet. They're electronic, so I could put my headset on and tune my cell phone into music that I want. You know, I just sit down there and play. So it was really kind of fun. Oh, there was a story that might be interesting. I took several lessons down here when I was, you know, picking up drums again. I hadn't played it really very much in 20 years or more when I came down. And I found a trio that I really liked, and I asked the drummer if he gave lessons, and he did. His name was Paul McDevitt. And he was a previous school superintendent, so he had his way of doing things. He was teaching me reading and so on, and he had a sheet that I had to play, and it was maybe 12 lines on it, and you're supposed to go ta-ding, ding, ta-ding with your right hand, and your left foot on the offbeat, ta-ding, chick, ta-ding, chick, ta-ding, chick, and then you had your bass drum, it was going dum, 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 dum. And your left hand was supposed to play while you're doing all this. That was line 1. So then on line 2 was, and you do it over and over. Well, I did those, and I thought I did them pretty well, and I went on and I played line 4. Yeah, I'm on line 5. Line 6, I was going through. Pretty hot stuff. I said, Paul, I can do those 3 lines. He said, let me hear you. So, yeah. And I went down, I can play 4 more lines. He said, Alan, I'm the teacher, you are the student. 3 lines. Bless his heart. Yes.
How does a person feel being so far away from home? Did you get any mail? Did you write letters? Did you make friends? Did you get depressed by the isolation of it all?
The question is, do you get depressed being away from home so much, so long? There was probably enough people there that were all the same depression. And we kept each other going, and we enjoyed the days. There were some that got in trouble and some that didn't. It seemed like I always had something to do, and I got some very good friends that I've had for a lifetime, and whether they're here or there or wherever, I still consider them friends. Now, I'm 84, and a lot of the people that I was with are gone. because I was young. I was 25, and there were people there that were 40. The captain was 40 years old. He looked like he was really old. And, that's 15 years. Well, he's not around. And his beautiful wife, Audrey, Captain Deacon, he was just a super guy. He and his wife should have been on the top of wedding cakes. So, yeah, you make do. And no, we couldn't telephone, but we did write letters. Occasionally, so how do you get them out? Well, you give them to another ship that's going back up, or you give it to, they have a post office at McMurdo, and you could stop and, if you were there, you give them letters to pick up. Up in the Arctic, we had a P2V that came by and dropped to us and landed on the ice, and we'd go out and pick it up. Mail day! So, yeah. Allison and I found one night, I guess it was night, it's always day there. I was called 10 o'clock at night. Doc, we have, your wife may be on the phone, because they were using shortwave radio, and they bounced it off the Van Allen radiation belt and back down into Chicago where she was. And it was a guy that was on his radio, and he contacted our ship. So they knew that I was out of Chicago, so they called me, and so he put me on his speaker, and we had to say, over. So it was really strange, because he would say, Allison, I love you. Over. I love you too. I miss you. Over. So that was the only time that we had. We were gone so long. We were gone so long. We were gone for 3 months. By the time we got back to New Zealand, and more so in what was the other big one over there? Right next to New Zealand. You know what it is, right? This is a question. Yes. What is the nation? Australia. See, I could figure that out. Anyhow, we heard these songs were coming in from, and they were talking about the twist. What's the twist? Well, it's big now. Well, what do you do? Well, they say it's like taking a, I don't know, blanket or something, and you wrap it on your ass. So when they got to Australia, they came back and they knew how to do the twist. The seamen that went ashore, one of the seamen that went ashore, I found 25 years later. I didn't recognize him, but we were at a reunion, and the guy said, oh, you were the dentist on the Burton Island on 60, 61, 62? Yeah. Man, you saved my arse, because I got beaten up and I lost all my front teeth up there, and you made something for me, and I could smile again. So are we about quarter of now? I think it's time for a card trick. Come on up. Someone want to help me here? Raise a hand. Raise a hand, and you choose somebody. If they were,
Okay.
Raise your hand if you want to help me with a card trick.
Come on up. Come on up, Mr. Dupont.
We've never met before, right?
That's right.
Okay, there's a deck of cards. No. You take it. You take it all day. Shuffle it up. Shuffle it up. And if you do that, I know I was off you guys back up in TV land, but now you can see us. Okay. So Well, that'd be interesting if you just selected that card, but we're not going to do that. But we are going to have you select a card, and it's relatively easy. And you just need to tell me when to stop.
Stop.
This one? This is your card. You see it? Up there? Amazing. Stay right there. I have this magic, I think it's, oh, I forgot to put the end of it. Did everybody see what the card was? Well, I have a deck of cards up there. Front and back. So, it's one card that's turned over. I wonder what it is. Piece of cake. Thank you very much. Awfully nice.
Thank you, Alan. Thank you very much. You're a very talented individual. I'm glad to be a friend.